Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, Joe here. Before we begin, this is part 2 of a special treat Nick and I prepared during the Christmas holiday of our Marvel Top 12 Best Post-Credit Scenes. Today is our audio version of picks 6 through 1. If you'd like to see the project and the visuals, which I highly recommend, check out our YouTube page. May the review be with you, and please give us a like and subscribe to help the channel out. Our next episode of the pod will be out this week, and it's a review of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, so be on the lookout. Okay, here's the show.
Number 6.
Does anyone else find it crazy that the quickest way to get a hold of an intergalactic superhero is to page them?
Now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense.
Oh, there is no way you believe that. But also, it's hilarious to realize that it took for disintegrating bodies to make Nick Fury finally call Captain Marvel for the first time in this universe.
We're, of course, talking about the post-credit scene in Infinity War with Nick Fury and Maria Hill. This scene, we were already coming off of one of the most brutal endings an MCU film, a superhero film, had ever given us, with the elimination of half of our heroes. And I remember our theater just being so quiet, and then this scene pops up, and we're watching Maria and then Nick start to disappear, and then the zoom in onto the pager. And I don't know, maybe it was because like we were all so sad or like horrified about what had just happened. And then those colors show up, and the hype in the room was at an all-time high. Like, we needed a hero in that moment.
Yeah, we needed something. Just complete excitement, utter disbelief when this whole thing goes down. And I think all of us were still hoping that the after credit scene was going to show us some glimpse of like, oh, okay, everything that just happened like is going to get reversed quickly. There's no way the movie ends like this. And then we see this happen to Fury and Hill. And then we see the pager with Captain Marvel's insignia on it. And we had gave us a little glimmer of hope.
I think what also makes this scene so memorable is after the carnage that we just witnessed in Infinity War, we learned that not even Nick Fury is safe from this.
The movie ends, and we're just all shocked in the theater, and we see Fury and Maria Hill, and we're just like, oh, thank God, like, everything's gonna be okay.
It feels like the adults showed up.
Yeah, it feels like the adults showed up, and then not even the adults were safe, because all of a sudden they're gone.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
I'm just like, what the hell is going on around here, man? And saying all of that, it makes me feel like maybe this should actually be higher on our list, because this was such a mega moment in the theater.
No, it is. And honestly, I think there is an argument to make this higher up on the list. And truthfully, I think if Captain Marvel actually served a larger role in the next film, segueing, I think it could have, right? Now, granted, Captain Marvel is a pretty controversial character throughout the MCU. You either really love this character, or she has a fan base, or she has a base that just does not like her. We stan her pretty hard over here. But either way, this moment, like you said, Nick, it was a glimmer of hope in an otherwise incredibly dark moment in the MCU. And for that reason alone, I think this post-credit scene amounted to hype that we had never seen before.
1000%.
Number 5.
You ever tried shawarma?
Nick, we made it!
Yes, we did. Number 5 on our top 12 MCU credit scenes list, and it's a tasty one.
Shawarma?
Shawarma, baby!
Yes, this scene deserves to be in the top 5 for many reasons. For instance, did you know the Avengers invented shawarma?
I want to be an Avenger.
Not exactly, no. But they damn well deserved it.
Absolutely. And what's wild is that it almost didn't exist, at least the scene, that is.
This scene was actually a last-second add-on, and I mean very last second. This movie actually had its red carpet premiere without the shawarma scene, and it was added a month later.
That's right. Robert Downey Jr. improvised the shawarma line after Hulk revived him. Feige and Joss Whedon thought that the idea of superheroes going to get a bite to eat in New York was so funny that they decided they needed to add it to the movie.
The problem was that the movie was already shot, and the actors were all doing different things, and they were on different schedules. That is, until the red carpet premiere. The actors shot the scene the day after the movie premiere.
And thus gave birth to one of Marvel's funniest images.
The MCU took off in popularity in part because of how realistic it felt to our world, like Tony selling weapons in the Middle East, or the United States reacting to aliens with a call to use nukes.
The image of seeing all these heroes exhausted and barely eating is funny and also highlights one of the MCU's early strengths. They felt like they were part of our world. I think everyone was waiting for something, right? Like we had just found out that the other was talking to Thanos all this time, and that was the mid-credit scene, right? And after the hype of building this team up, we're all waiting collectively there for whatever could be at the end of the credits, since, you know, that's what Marvel had built itself on, was through these credit scenes. And then it's just the most ridiculous image of like these guys who barely they don't look alive. They look dead.
Yes, they're all just absolutely exhausted. No speaking, no dialogue, just complete exhaustion and hunger, understandably. And it's just like, it's a hilarious scene. Also, the fact that like the restaurant workers found time to cook despite the damage that they were cleaning up at the same time, like...
That to me is like the most realistic part of the scene, is that after a disaster that these people still showed up for work, because like that's a real New York thing. It's like I gotta be able to put dinner on the table. I got a job to do.
No matter what.
No matter what. Those are the real heroes, let me tell you. I adore that.
I completely agree. What a just brilliant and fun way to close out Avengers 1.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like, one of my favorite parts about this scene is going around the table and just taking a look at what each and every character is doing. I think Tony's the only one who's actually eating. Steve is just staring off into space. I think Thor and our Banner are both just dead asleep. And like, you can't see Romanoff or Martin, as they both look dead. You see the backs of them, and they just might as well be corpses at that point.
They're all just taking a nap at the Swarmer joint together.
When Robert, improvised that shawarma line, he being Joss here, realized, no, actually, we do need to have that scene. That is hilarious, and he's right. And it ended up being one of the most iconic post-credit scenes in the entire MCU.
Number 4.
Humans.
Please stop.
Let me try that again.
No.
Humans.
No.
They were not the cowering wretches we were promised. They are
Okay, well, he's really going to do this. So, while Joe continues to embarrass himself with an awful impression, coming in at number 4 is our first introduction to Thanos. This might have been one of the most important post-credit scenes in the entire MCU, at least for the phases 1 through 3. Marvel had just finished its huge milestone after assembling the Avengers for the first time on screen, and it proved that a large-scale superhero ensemble movie was not only possible, but also financially successful. It may seem like no big deal now, but at the time, this was new, and the battles that took place at the theater captivated audiences for an entire summer. After wrapping up the battle for New York, beating Loki and his alien forces while saving the city from a nuclear bomb, where could Marvel possibly take audiences next?
To court death.
Right on cue.
Sorry, I got really into that. Have you been doing this all by yourself?
Yes.
Sorry. All right, I got it from here. After watching our heroes take down an army and a nuke, Marvel teased the future of the series in a new direction. I don't think comic book fans ever expected superhero movies to ever go. Thanos and the Infinity Stones. While Iron Man 1 teased an eventual Avengers movie, this scene teased a universe of storytelling for the next 7 years to come. Marvel just delivered one of the most successful comic book movies ever, and straight off the heels of it, they teased one of their most beloved villains of all time. The hype was at an all-time high. We just talked about Shawarma, and we kind of teased this already because we talked about the mid-credit scene, but like, I mean, for real though, I don't know if people saw it coming. I don't know if people were like, I'm waiting for this. Are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? Or if they were just totally surprised. I was totally surprised. I didn't know about Thanos too much. I only knew of him like very, very loosely at this point. But that chin is very recognizable.
Yep.
And even if you'd only seen Thanos once, you knew who that was.
Shocking too, because like you said, they just like had this huge ordeal, and we just like absolutely one of the best stories that have been told, and then all of a sudden we're gonna get this insane, powerful character next. Like, what could possibly happen, essentially, from all this?
I think that was the hype, right? Is even if you don't know who Thanos is, right? That introduction of like to court death and like that turn of just like this menacing grin, I think kind of tells you everything you need to know. Is the battle for New York was just the beginning, and something so much worse is coming. We talked earlier about the size difference between the Sanctuary 2 and the Statesman, and I think this is kind of an early like draft of this, right? Where it's not necessarily like a contrast in size here, but there's a contrast in feelings. Like, yeah, we just saved New York, hooray! But now we're looking at this image that seems to impose something much, much more dangerous.
Right. Like, New York was actually small time compared to what Thanos is going to rain on us later on. Unreal.
Yeah, Unreal is right. And I think one of my favorite things about this scene is the Other himself. He's a character we really don't get a whole heck of a lot of. Like, we get him in this movie, and then we get him in Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's the end of him. And I think he's one of the more mysterious characters that we ever get to see in the MCU, and we really don't get any answers on him. I think the most interesting thing about the Other is something that's actually retroactive. So like in his speech, like to court death, which already is like a super metal line.
Yeah.
It seems to imply what Marvel's original plan for Thanos was, which clearly changed a lot by the time we actually got to Infinity War. Because in the comics, Thanos' original, the whole Infinity Gauntlet story is about him trying to woo the actual embodiment of death. He loves the woman Death, and the way that he's going to woo her, to court her, is he's going to erase half of all life in the universe. And that line seems to very much imply that they were originally thinking about adapting that story the way that it was, something that was more believable in terms of like its relatability to our world. They related it to resources as opposed to trying to I don't know, go on a date with the concept of death.
Right. Yeah, fascinating, and great point too, with of course the call out of to court death. So multiple meanings in that sentence there.
Number 3.
What the? Breaking news: Spider-Man is Peter Parker.
That's not really breaking news. We all know that.
Yeah, but like, they didn't know that.
Coming in at number 3.
Do you think Peter like wears or brings deodorant with him when he goes web slinging?
That is, why are you like this?
I'm just saying, he swings all day in the New York sun in a polysynthetic suit. How breathable is that even?
Can you please focus?
No, all I can think about is how MJ must be keeping it to herself, how smelly he is.
The suit has an AI and like 50 different combinations of web attacks.
Just because it's advanced doesn't mean it doesn't stink.
Joe, for the love of God, it has a vacuum seal that we saw in Homecoming. It can clearly air itself out.
That's actually a really good point.
Okay. now that that's settled.
Coming in at number 3 on our best post-credit scene list is the breaking news announcement at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home.
This movie was brutal with Mysterio's beatdown of Peter.
For real, that Nightmare Illusion sequence is still one of the best fights in the entire MCU. Oh, that would make a really good future countdown list.
And even after Peter beats him, Mysterio manages to get one last brutal punch in and actually ruin Peter's life. Although, as we'll find out in the next Spider-Man movie, nobody is as good at ruining Peter's life as Peter is.
The scene was so unexpected, and I think it delivered one of the best cliffhangers, not including Infinity War, the MCU has ever delivered. One of the hallmarks of the Home series was maintaining Peter's secret identity, and in one scene, it strips that entire plot element away.
After teasing the multiverse in this movie, the post-credit scene welcomes J.K. Simmons back into the role of J. Jonah Jameson to start spreading that Spider-Man misinformation.
Who is Spider-Man? He's a criminal, that's who he is. A vigilante.
Making this scene memorable for so many reasons. And unlike Tony, who chose to make his identity public, that choice is stolen from Peter. It's a moment that changed everything. And if that's not worthy of a top 3 list mention, I don't know what is.
This was the beginning of Marvel's multiverse, but like only sort of.
Yeah, only sort of. But like, what a beginning. J. Jonah Jameson in the flesh, in the MCU.
This blew my mind when I saw this in theaters, because like I remember going into this movie thinking like, oh, are they gonna get weird with the multiverse here? Like we know that Mysterio is apparently a multiverse like warrior or something, and like what's gonna happen? Is Tobey Maguire gonna show up? Like what's gonna happen? And then we come to find out that of course it's not real. Of course it's Mysterio putting on an illusion and just made up the whole multiverse thing, which is so funny because like apparently he just predicted what was going to happen next.
Right.
So even though I loved Mysterio and I loved that, oh, that's not real, I did feel a little let down that, oh, we're not doing multiverse yet. Oh, that's a bit of a bummer. And then we get to this post-credit scene, and like they must have known that I was in the audience. This was for me. They must have known that I was going to be a little disappointed. And they were like, no, Joe, hang in there.
Yeah.
Here's a little tease of the multiverse.
Hang in there, and it's J.K. Simmons, Joe's favorite.
And it's J.K. Simmons!
Like, fantastic. Immense excitement in theaters. Just, I mean, basically almost dropping an F-bomb with everyone in theaters, right? Like, same reaction as Spider-Man in the theater, though, basically. Like, what the? So, like, mega moment. And we should also talk about how Zendaya hates web swinging.
we should absolutely talk about how Zendaya hates web swinging. I love her rendition of MJ, how different this character is, and that moment in and of itself is just really funny, and definitely checks one of the boxes off of our criteria list for what makes a great post-credit scene. But Nick, you pointed out that in Ragnarok, that post-credit scene threads the needle so beautifully and like seamlessly into Infinity War, and this post-credit scene does the same exact thing, except we don't skip anything. With Infinity War, there is just a small skip of Thanos beating up all the Asgardians, right? We start the movie, right? But we know that the implication happened. Whereas this just picks up right from where the post-credit scene literally ended, right? It's, if this scene doesn't want to make you watch No Way Home immediately to find out what the heck happened, I don't know what would.
Yeah, that's a great point. This actually contradicts, I think, my statement from our previous episode. Like, this is actually the closest timeline hop between a post-credit scene and the next movie. Like, this is literally 0 seconds. Like, this is here's a credit, and then this other movie starts right here, and so like, enjoy.
It might as well just be one movie,
right?
The two movies. Honestly, with the theme of the multiverse, like, it kind of works in a weird way.
Yep.
Just a very long movie sitting that maybe you should take an intermission for. Also, I have to just point this out. I think it's so funny that Mysterio, that the way he words the statement is Spider-Man is Peter Parker, as if Peter Parker is this famous person that like everyone would know, because like in Times Square there was some New Yorker who was like, who the f*** is that? Like,
honestly, there's probably still people who don't know who Peter Parker is, right? Like, it's like, what is this? And actually now nobody does. Spoilers.
Number 2.
Oh my god. This should have been number 1 on the list.
It could have. Honestly, if it were a list of the most entertaining scenes from the MCU, it probably would.
It lives rent-free in my head, and in the heads of millions of others.
For good reason. This scene is delightful and actually accomplishes a couple things for the Guardians of the Galaxy narrative.
Oh yeah, first, we get to see Groot grow a bit after watching him sacrifice himself for his friends in the climax of the movie. It's one of the most moving scenes in the entire MCU. So to go from that poignant, sad moment to this goofy and delightful vibe, it just sticks with and puts you in a good mood.
The scene also takes advantage of Gunn's use of music to push the narrative forward throughout the movie.
Gunn originally pitched using music from the 70s and 80s to make the film feel more grounded and remind audiences that Peter is from Earth.
But at the end of the movie, we get I Want You Back by the Jackson 5 with Baby Groot dancing, making him feel more human and Earth-like.
Plus, Baby Michael Jackson's voice kind of goes really well with Baby Groot stealing the show.
Equally delightful, James Gunn told the public after the film's release that Baby Groot's dance moves are actually based on Gunn's very own silly moves.
Yes, and he apparently told everyone to leave the studio because he was too shy to do this scene in front of everyone else. He videotaped himself and then sent the footage to his animators, and the rest is MCU legend. Ultimately, it's just one of the most memorable scenes in the MCU, and deserves to be number 2 on our list. But there is an argument for number 1, in my opinion.
It was funny then, it was hilarious then. Do you think it's still funny now?
I think it's fantastic now. I've just got done doing like a rewatch, or at least we're past this part of the rewatch of the MCU timeline, and I love this scene. It still holds up. The funny ones are always funny, and they stick with you. So, like, it stands out. And you know what? Like, Drax has his own separate comedic performance and comedic relief, and so him and Groot on the screen together, like, as good as it gets.
It is, and I agree. I think this scene is classic, and it's just so fun that it's hard not to smile at it. By the way, speaking of Drax here, as Drax keeps whipping his head around to see if Groot is dancing, do you know why he's stopping to dance every time Drax looks at him?
No, why is that?
So it's actually confirmed in the audio commentary in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 that he's doing that because Drax thinks dancing is stupid and he doesn't dance. And Groot wants Drax to think Groot is cool. So that's why he stops dancing every time he looks at him.
That's so charming. This scene should be number 1.
This scene, because I have to imagine because of how popular this scene is, or just maybe how much it tickled James Gunn, that he doubles down this scene and it becomes the intro to Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with Groot dancing. And then it kind of becomes the ending of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 when The Dog Days of Summer is playing, when everyone is dancing, and finally, so is Drax.
Great point. Yeah, it's one of the best parts of the Guardians franchise is really just how it intertwines music, and then of course Groot dancing. Who doesn't love Groot dancing?
Dude, all forms of Groot dancing. I'll take all ages of Groot dancing. I love it, but Baby Groot, that's a special dance in my heart. It's the first one, it's the best one. Also, do you think in that scene that this is how Drax learned to become invisible?
I think Drax is still learning how to become invisible.
Number 1.
Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Of course, this was the number 1 scene. We're not insane.
I mean, we did put the Captain America PSA at number 10.
I am not redefending that choice. It makes sense.
In any case, coming in at the top of our post-credit scene list is the post-credit scene that started it all. Not just the trend and technique of using post-credit scenes to thread different films together, but also the beginning of the Marvel Universe and now multiverse. It all starts with Nick Fury telling Tony he's part of a much bigger universe.
And how right he was. This scene crosses all of the check boxes, which is impressive given the next movie would have Tony Stark in a post-credit scene taking the role of Nick Fury to speak with Thunderbolt Ross, and honestly, it isn't nearly as memorable.
I mean, that movie is only barely canon.
That is not true, and you know it.
I'm just saying, how often have you watched The Incredible Hulk on your MCU rewatches?
Moving on, this scene is fun for so many reasons. First, just like the shawarma scene, this scene was mostly improvised. Feige and director Jon Favreau asked comic book writer Brian Michael Bendis, the guy who invented Miles Morales, to come in the day before they shot the scene to, well, write the scene.
Basically, Feige asked Bendis to write dialogue for Jackson, and Bendis couldn't say yes fast enough.
It's funny how many comic book lovers don't like Bendis, and yet his resume has some pretty iconic work.
And this scene is iconic, and it's funny because this almost wasn't the scene that we got. Feige released an alternate version of this scene where Fury references the X-Men and Spider-Man.
Marvel Studios was just a fledgling production company at the time, but it really shows you here that they were banking on Iron Man to kick off what they believed could be decades of superhero cinema storytelling.
This was the beginning of a much larger story. It was the beginning of Feige pulling off one of the most ambitious gambits in Hollywood history, and it struck gold. With help, of course, from Samuel L. Jackson, leaning in to the cool factor.
Funny enough, Jackson agreed to do this as a favor to Jon Favreau. Favreau was a big comic book fan, and he wanted to fill the movie with Easter eggs. One of those Easter eggs was the reimagining of Nick Fury in 2002. The comic book, The Ultimates, which is a lot of what the MCU is based on, featured a new Nick Fury, no longer a white guy. He'd been reimagined to look like, well, Samuel L. Jackson. They actually never asked his permission either.
That's awkward.
Yeah, but it's one of those rare instances of life imitating art.
I love that Favreau added the post-credit scene to just do a fun Easter egg moment. And now post-credit scenes are one of the most important parts of an MCU film's DNA.
This scene, Nick, I don't even remember if I was expecting a post-credit scene. I think like post-credit scenes were like one of those things that a movie may or may not have at the time. And I think I was on a roll with picking the movies that did, and I stuck around, and then sure enough, the movie kept going after the credits had finished and Tony walked into his home. And I don't know what else to say because the hype came so quickly in this moment.
Listen, this is how much Marvel's post-credit scenes changed the game. In your head, you thought that there used to be some post-credit scenes in movies. There were never post-credit scenes in movies. When you saw the credits roll, you left the theater. When this happened, it was just like, what in the world is gonna happen next? Like, it was totally ridiculous. Like, there wasn't any post-credit scenes before this happened. Like, this is the reason there's post-credit scenes. Because of the MCU. Like, this is it.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, post-credit scenes, Marvel certainly didn't invent them, but I think they popularized them in the modern
100%.
era of cinema, right? I think people started Googling after different movies to see like, hey, is there a post-credit scene? Should I wait around to see like, if it's actually a thing? And because you have to now, because so many films are trying to piggyback off of what Marvel did. It should be noted that Iron Man, even though like it is definitely regarded as one of the most successful superhero movies of all time, that it wasn't the only superhero movie that came out during that summer. The Dark Knight also came out around the same time, also beloved, also regarded as one of the best, if not the best, superhero film of all time. But I think this film holds up differently because it really did kick off a new era of superhero storytelling.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's hilarious. I would never have guessed that was the other movie that came out during that year if you would have asked me. But obviously, insanely good film. Like, great film. Great superhero film. But yeah, this specifically kicking off a universe that we're still enthralled with and still excited about and still looking forward to what's next.
It is funny, like, thinking about those two films in that year and where we are now as far as those individual properties go, as far as Disney and Warner Brothers go, because The Dark Knight, when it came out, and to this day, is heralded as one of the greatest superhero films of all time, and what a high for the DC universe to ride in that moment. But for Marvel, Iron Man was just the beginning, right? And the best of Marvel was still yet to come. Whereas, unfortunately for DC, I don't think they've ever had anything that's even come close to The Dark Knight.
Nope. I think you're correct about that. Maybe the closest thing was the most recent The Batman by Matt Reeves.
Probably, but that might be the closest thing that comes.
That's our list. How did we do? You love it? Do you hate it? Either way, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching all this, and if you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a like and a subscribe.
That was a Merry Marvel Christmas Countdown. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Peace.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.